you have any witnesses you'll be calling at this time?
I don't believe either of the defendants wish to take the stand. Could I just get a confirmation of that from both of you?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
All right.
Yeah, I don't want to go up there. Ramee, you should.
I think I need this.
No, Ramos, you're a bit tired today.
I don't think. I don't think
Okay.
it's a good idea.
Okay, dude.
I got a method for us later.
Yeah,
Oh, say less. Come on, yeah, let's wrap this up.
All right. Yeah, they're not taking the stand.
I don't want to take the stand. I just want to give a statement.
Then Counselor Braun, would you like to go ahead and highlight evidence at this time?
If they're gonna load it into their closing, I want to hear theirs before I show them mine. So
Okay.
we'll just get to them first.
Very well. If neither defendant is going to testify at this time, you're going to go and lump your evidence into your closing.
Correct.
That leaves me with a question for the courts. How are we on closings? Are they ready? Do you need time?
Put your all into
what
the
are we
Smurf.
looking at here?
Always
People
ready,
are
Your Honor.
okay, Your Honor.
I'm ready.
My life is on the line here, Murph.
Okay.
Hey, say
Nice.
it was
We'll-
Miguel's
we'll
bombs.
sweat it.
Say it was Miguel's bombs. We're good.
your dick out to make a
Prosecution,
statement, too.
you're ready
Why
to
you
go.
say-
Go ahead and go first.
People will pay better
All right.
attention.
Flip another correct page here. All right, let me know when you are ready, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Your Honor, and people of the court. The foundation of this case, began to cement on June 2023. Carmine Gallo, whose name appears at the center of this investigation multiple times, became the target of the Chang Gang, which I'm just going to say CG from this point forward. Specifically, Mr. K, Mr. Kevin, and Ramee Al-Rahman began a series of orchestrated and escalating attacks against Mr. Costello's colleagues at the Department of Corrections. The People's A on June 25th, 2023, Bob Eagle was kidnapped alongside Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello was subjected to a, quote, surprise surgery using a, quote, medical Beretta 9mm to, quote, revive him during the kidnapping. Both victims were abandoned outside of Bolingbrook, and admittedly, no suspects were directly identified. However, investigators have narrowed in on this incident as the start. The People's B, June 27th, 2023. Mr. Costello was transported to jail on contempt charges. DOC officers, along with members of the Unified Police Department, reported that Mr. K broke into and subsequently out of prison when he was then shot down through the course of felony trespassing. Defendant Ramee Al-Rahman was then witnessed by the UPD fleeing on foot and utilizing a grapple gun. And we're going to hone in on that, utilizing a grapple gun. A common theme for defendant Ramee. Ramee was subsequently shot
Yes, you are
down,
the
found to
only
have a grapple
person who
gun,
uses a grapple
handcuffs,
gun.
and a phone dongle on
Confirmed.
his person. The People C, June 28th, 2023.
I'm
Mr.
confused.
K
Am I
and
in
Mr.
this trial,
Costello
or
were
is it
both
Mr. K?
subject to an investigation
I
in
don't
the
know.
prison,
Here we go.
in which the DOC officers indicated that Mr. K had returned to the prison following his
Fuck,
release
K,
and,
if I go
quote,
downtown,
shot
you're
a
taking
member
my
of
spot,
DOC
okay?
in the chest in the front lobby of the visitation center. The victim of that attack, DOC Correctional Officer Bobby Charles, stated that Mr. K told him, quote, never stay too close to the windows before shooting him. The People's E, June 29th, 2023, UPD officers responded to distress calls at Bolingbrook and found Mr. Costello, Mr. Charles, and other correctional officers injured, with Mr. K and defendant Ramee on scene. The statement of correctional officers indicated that a confrontation arose between Mama and Mr. Costello, at which time Mr. K withdrew a hammer and started swinging, and Ramee entered the room with a katana, slicing at Mr. Charles and Mr. Costello. The same day, People's F, officers responded to another distress call from correctional officers indicating that defendant Ramee had held Mr. Costello hostage inside of the prison and was negotiating for a lower prison sentence. Defendant Ramee was witnessed by guards taking a call from individuals he referred to as Mr. K, and then Mr. K was identified by officers using a grapple gun to enter Bolingbrook. People's F, June 30th, 2023, that's when things escalated. Mr. Costello and Mr. K entered into a conflict. Mr. Costello was found at the Chang Gang Cubby in Little Seoul when Mr. K called Commissioner Sam Baas to mediate the conflict between the two. This ended in tragedy as Mr. Costello twatted an image from the top of the Elysian Fields Bridge stating it was the, quote, winner POV, while Mr. K and Commissioner Baas were found in critical condition below the bridge. Later that same day, the UPD responded to a call documented in the People's G indicating that Eugene Zuckerberg, another affiliate of CG, had also broken into prison. Upon arrival, an officer was confronted by a man in a black suit with chest armor who poured gasoline all over their vehicle and ignited it, instructing officers to, quote, stop following them. The reporting officer indicated not only that this individual sounded like Mr. K, but that a vehicle registered to Mr. K was located very nearby. July 2nd, 2023, the People's J, 10 days before the incident that we're here for today. Things escalated once again when Bobby Charles of the DOC indicated that 5 to 6 individuals approached him and started making rattlesnake noises, striking him with a sledgehammer.
What is it?
July 6th, 2023, as documented in the People's K, officers of the UPD located Mr. Costello and 2 other guards heavily burnt with spent casings of an RPG on the ground nearby. Correctional officer statements, specifically from Officer Charles, indicated.
What does this have to do with
officer
anything?
Statements indicated that Officer Charles had previously waterboarded Mr. K, and that Mr. K had a vendetta against both CO Charles and CO Costello. When CO Gold arrived at Bolingbrook, a Humvee car was driving around the prison. Gold approached Costello, at which time he was taken hostage, flown into the sky with a helicopter, and pushed to the ground. And finally, July 12th, 2023, the People's M, hours prior to the first explosions at SDSO and MRPD. Mr. Costello was getting married to France Gall. Not a marriage of love, but infatuation of a vehicle that Miss Gall apparently owns, that Mr. Costello wanted. France Gall texted Mr. K the location of the wedding, and during the ceremony, 3 women, 2 who were directly identified as Rosa Garcia and Carmela Corset, both affiliated with CG, approached Miss Gall, pulled her to the side, and then the church exploded mysteriously, injuring everyone near the front of the church closest to Mr. Costello, including Mr. Costello himself. None of this suggests direct responsibility for the crimes that were present for him. What it does suggest, however, is motive. It demonstrates an ongoing and escalating cycle of violence between members of CG, including Defendant Ramee and Mr. Costello, beginning with simple kidnappings, attacks with blunt and melee instrumentations, and culminating in bombings. Now, to piece the evidence of July 12, 2023 through July 14th together. The primary report, the People's End, documents the series of events on the night of July 12th. Noted by Deputy Bayo, at the time the bomb was planted, Mr. K was being interviewed by Commissioner Sam Baas at the SDSO. To quote, Mr. Kevin took a phone call with Carmine in front of Baas and Bayo talking about $200,000 to $500,000 loan and RPGs. This is corroborated by the affidavit of Red Harrington and the testimony of Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello was being driven by Harrington throughout the day, spent all of his money at the casino, and was in desperate need of a loan. Despite their conflict, Mr. Costello calls Mr. K asking for money, quoting the devil you know in the interview that we took with him. They travel to the SDSO with the intent of getting a loan from Mr. K.
Bro, is this all about me?
Around this time, Sergeant Shelby Lane was clocking on duty. Approximately 0200 UTC. She's running to the Sonora Desert Sheriff's Office to clock on duty, and she witnesses 2 blacked out suspects grappling from the SDSO building and getting into a black and colored vehicle. As soon as the suspects begin running to the car, Lane hears beeping coming from the SDSO that sounds similar to a bomb. Around the same time, Detective Aurora Rain is approaching the SDSO for vehicle maintenance prior to the bomb being reported via 311, 911, or radio traffic. To quote her report, while approaching the SDSO, a large black hellionish-looking truck frequently seen at the Changaloa compound was on the northwest corner of the SDSO. An individual dressed in black with a katana on his back who resembled Ramee El Rahman was seen jumping down from the roof of the SDSO and jumped into the black truck and left the area. Thus, 2 officers obtained partial identification of suspects unknown and or Mr. El Rahman on the scene, an identification further enforced and supported by later evidence. After the bomb was reported, multiple units arrived on scene. Game Warden Tessa Lamb, Sergeant Aaron Bison, Sergeant Brian Knight, myself, Senior Ranger Bundy, and Corporal Mike Baio. Mr. Costello arrives on scene along with Red Harrington as the units scramble to the scene and start to gain control of it. Mr. Costello offers to defuse the bomb for money, which he had discussed with Mr. K on the phone, and Carmine and Harrington are both detained by Tessa Lamb and Sergeant Bison. Sergeant Bison arrives with his ride-along, ultimately locating the bomb on the roof, discovering that it only had a minute and a half remaining prior to detonation. Commissioner Baas indicates that Costello was going to defuse the bomb, but Sergeant Bison advised that they leave the bomb to detonate because there's not enough time by the time this decision gets made. Commissioner Baas orders Costello to be released from detention to attempt to defuse the bomb, but as he approaches, the bomb detonates. Mr. Costello was then transported to Sandy Shores Medical for treatment, detained by Sergeant Bison and Game Warden Lamb, and Mr. K is taken by Baio and Baas to MRPD. The bomb detonated at exactly 0209 UTC on July 13th, 2023. 2 minutes and 15 seconds later, at 2:12 UTC, Ramee Rahman calls Commissioner Baas. His cell phone location at that time places him directly at the SDSO. To clarify, limited civilians were aware of what had even happened at this stage. It all happened very quickly within a 5-minute time span. And even fewer are aware that Mr. Costello was present at the explosion or that he's even taken into custody. Civilians directly on scene are Mr. Harrington, EMS, Deputy Mayor Nancy Drew. That's it. Also aware were Mr. Costello and Mr. K, but they're both in custody, so they can't tell anybody. Shortly after, Mr. K twats. Quote, Carmine is a goddamn criminal. He just blew up Sandy Shores PD. Shortly after Mr. K, Commissioner Baas, Corporal Baio, they arrive at Mission Row Police Department while Costello is en route to Beaver Bush Ranger Station. Another 911 comes in. All capital letters, if you don't release Carmine from custody, we are going to bomb again. Units attempt to negotiate via 911, and Corporal Baio is responding to the 911s, and then a second one comes in a few minutes later. We aren't willing to negotiate, and since you didn't release Carmine, another PD goes. Around the time of the second 911, Ramee Rahman receives a telephone call. That call is triangulates his phone directly to the area of Mission Row Police Department. Sergeant Knight and Senior Ranger Bundy, that's me, were on the phone when Knight hears beeping. He scrambles through the building, he clears it, he goes into the parking lot, he's looking for the bomb, he's making sure there's no civilians and no suspects in custody, he's clearing officers out, and ultimately he reaches the rooftop, finding the bomb on top of MRPD. Similar to the SDSO scene, multiple units arrive on scene in an attempt to secure the area. Senior Ranger Bundy, that's me, I drive over to Sergeant Bison's location, I trade vehicles with him because he got head on by a street racer. And I travel to
Probably falling asleep.
Carmine's still in custody. Bison, meanwhile, travels to MRPD to gain control of the scene and to exercise EOD. Corporal Baio and Commissioner Baas ensured that MRPD was evacuated when Mr. K and Commissioner Baas determined that Mr. K would be able to defuse the bomb. Mr. K and Commissioner Baas ascend to the rooftop through the stairs. Meanwhile, EMS stages in the area. Chief of EMS, Kiki Pendragon, and her trainee, they hover about a half a mile away in life flight. Mr. K and Commissioner Baas step out onto the front roof, and the bomb has 50 seconds remaining. They're informed of this by Bison, and Mr. K turns to Baas and embraces him. He hugs him, and he says, at least we'll go out together. Aaron Bison starts frantically attempting to defuse the bomb. He's ripping out wires, but unfortunately, he's just not successful. According to EMS testimony, the bomb detonated not once, but twice, catching Mr. K, Sergeant Bison, and the late Commissioner Sam Baas in the explosion. Life Flight lands, it performs rescue operations, but upon arrival, Commissioner Sam Baas is not responsive. He has no pulse, he's not breathing. and he's not responsive to their attempts. He's transported straight to surgery at Sandy Shores Medical, and the doctors aren't able to help him. The following day, July 13th, 2023.
Bro,
Detective
I gotta
Brian
think
Knight
of what I'm gonna
gets a
say to
phone
like
call,
Tessa and
which he
Eve.
documented for the People's S. This is from Mr. K.
Shit, we are guilty and all
Mr. K
that.
also was transported for medical services.
Yeah, I did that
with
shit.
Ramee Ramee
I'm just
arriving
kidding.
at his bedside. He's released from
Oh,
intensive care the following
fuck,
day, and
dude.
he's asking Brian Knight on the phone, demanding to know who killed Sam Baas. On the same date, defendant Ramee Rahman was the victim of not one but 2 attacks with rocket-propelled grenades, documented in the People's Zo and the People's P. Incidents he had no recollection of whatsoever during his recorded interview. However, per Knight's recollection of the People's S, Mr. K indicated he was seeking revenge. Revenge for a loved one that he had lost less than 24 hours before. Knight gets a second call from K, who states that he's in an upside-down world and he's losing his mind. Knight then gets a third call from K, stating that he did something bad. At that time, Knight, Bundy, that's me, and Kovacic travel to Sandy Shores Mines, and they locate Cap Terranova, stabbed, as documented in the People's Q. The phone records of Ramee Rahman show that at almost this exact time, Mr. K texts Ramee a photograph of Terranova, Pigeon, lying face down on the train tracks inside of the mines of Sandy Shores. And then he texts him, lies, 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 the bird flies no more. The People's U around line 1500 or so. Mr. K, who loved Baas, who asked Baas to mediate conflict with Costello, learning that Baas was dead, became broken and started attacking his own allies, Ramee Rahman, Cap Terranova, and Bobby Brown. Per the People's R, the following day, another bomb is planted. Deputy Velsing was at Beaverbush Park Ranger Station when he witnessed an individual with, quote, a black hoodie and a wingsuit on his back flee the area. Velsing loses visual, and then he sees a sports car circling and leaving the area. And Murphy's going to love this part because he's been asking all night. When asked in his affidavit, Velsing indicated that the suspect fleeing Beaverbush precisely matched the photograph of Miguel Almerian at the time that he was being interviewed by Brian Knight and Jeffrey Bundy. Following that vehicle disappearing, a 911 indicates that an explosive device has been planted at Beaverbush Ranger Station. Velsing finds it, and then it immediately blows up. There was virtually no chance to defuse it. Beyond merely identifying a similar outfit, the phone records of Miguel Almerian place Miguel Almerian in the area of the Beaverbush bombing, directly north of the Vinewood area. Further, Ramee Rahman's phone records place him directly south of Beaverbush moments before detonation, lines 23 and 24 of the cell phone records in the People's U. Mr. L. Rahman was interviewed. And the court's going to decide whether they strike that interview while they're in chambers. But this was July 15th, 2023. Brian Knight and Jeffrey Bundy, we took him down to the Villegas building, and the recordings, the People's...
Yo, this is funny as fuck.
He agreed to an interview, was brought to the FIB building for a discussion, which occurred on recording.
Oh, I'm going to mute him. This is funny as fuck, dude. On my Twitter, the guy goes, Van Gogh bathroom. Van Gogh bathroom, right? It's a fucking bathroom of this looks sick, right? Like this guy goes, I Van to go take a shit. I don't know why, bro, but this shit I thought this was funny as fuck. I want to go take a shit. Van Gogh bathroom. Sorry, all right, on mute. That was just stupid humor.
To ask about the stabbing of Cap Terranova. Ramee contradicted the physical evidence at multiple turns. He states he wasn't at Beaverbush on the day of the bombing. He stated he had not been with Miguel Almerian in the days prior. He stated he had not been at the SDSO at the time of the bombing. And this is all despite phone records and logs showing him on scene at the SDSO 2 minutes after detonation. Phone records showing him directly south of Beaverbush following that bombing. Phone records showing him at MRPD 5 minutes prior to detonation. And Miguel Almerian's own statements on recorded interview that he had been with Ramee continuously for 3 days. And perhaps most interestingly, Ramee claimed that he was first in Little Soul Cubby and then, quote, just driving around waiting on Kay to be released from custody at the time of the MRPD bombing. But again, that's not what his phone records tell us. Following the incidents involved, Ramee was also arrested or witnessed by officers on separate occasions in possession of a grapple gun. The same contraband which was witnessed and used by officers to scale the roof of the SDSO and which was likely used to scale the roof of MRPD. Another was found in his Little Soul apartment during his search and seizure. And one of the other separate incidents is the People's AO, crimes that he committed afterward. Miguel Almerian is interviewed on the same day as Ramee, and in that recording, Almerian denies any knowledge of the explosion at MRPD, but he states that he knew Commissioner Baas had passed away. Miguel Almerian stated on record that he had no relationship with Carmine Costello, but then he starts to go on this contention and stating that he, quote, beat him up every time that he saw him. Miguel also married his whereabouts to those of Ramee L. Raman. Quote, literally me and Ramee the last 3 days haven't left each other's sides. Miguel stated that he was with Ramee on July 12, 2023. He states that he and Ramee were at the Yellow Jack prior to the explosion in the SDSO. He states that he believes that they were there at the end of it because they, quote, saw Mr. K and Carmine in cuffs outside of the SDSO. Miguel stated that he and Ramee, quote, just left and there was no reason for them to be there. After leaving Sandy Shores, Miguel says he and Ramee went back to the Cubby and Little Soul, stayed there for an undetermined amount of time, and then they were just driving around when they got a call about Mr. K and went to the hospital. Miguel stated that Ramee, Miguel, and Bobby were the only 3 present, 2 of whom were the later targets of Mr. K's revenge, as talked about before. The day prior to the interview, Miguel stated that he was with Ramee driving around in a black and color vehicle with a white stripe. Ramee was bitching about Miguel due to the car giving Ramee headaches and departed his presence in Little Soul. Miguel denied any knowledge of Ramee driving RC cars in the area of Vinewood following the bombing of the Beaverbush Park Ranger Station, which is interesting because in Ramee's interview, he admitted to that wholesale. Miguel admitted to being present when Ramee L. Raman was injured in the area of the mine shafts of the Vinewood Hills, stating that he and Ramee were responding to an unknown phone number. They saw cars at the mine shaft, and there were spooky sounds coming from inside with some priest-like individual. Miguel also states that he was present at the Meriwether docks with Bobby and Ramee when Bobby went downstairs. Miguel hears the sound of a rocket-propelled grenade, and Ramee is injured and Bobby is struck but not incapacitated. Miguel concurs with Ramee that Kay was upset at Baas's passing because Kay and Baas were in love, and Kay had been very, quote, distant since Baas's death. The people ask that this court remember the burden that's laid before it, whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Miguel Almerian and Ramee L. Raman orchestrated the attacks of the SDSO, MRPD, and Beaverbush Park Ranger Station. To rephrase that burden, it is the duty of the people to convince this court that there is no other reasonable explanation that can come from the evidence that we present today. Bombs don't leave physical evidence behind, they leave rubble. A careful bomber leaves no trace. There's no cell phone activation, there's no fingerprints, there's no bullet casings, there's nothing on forensics. The people are left with only one option: construct a narrative through the evidence that's available. So what is the evidence? Not one, but 2 officers got a partial identification of Mr. L. Raman. Sergeant Lane notes 2 individuals jumping from the SDSO roof, evading into a vehicle, hearing the bomb ticking. Detective Rain noted an individual matching the customary clothing and body type of Mr. L. Raman, utilizing a grapple gun, as he has proven to love in the past, and incidents after the bombing. Noting vehicles previously driven by members of the Changaloa cartel, compromised of various members of CG, including Mr. L. Raman. 2 minutes after the bomb detonates, L. Raman is on scene according to his phone records. We know that Ramee L. Raman was on scene because of this. We know that the second individual spotted was therefore likely Miguel Almerian. Quote, literally, me and Ramee the last 3 days haven't left each other's side. The 911 caller was an individual who knew that Carmine Costello was in custody. The individuals who witnessed Carmine in custody are limited to police officers, Deputy Mayor Nancy Drew, Mr. K, Ramee Rahman, and Miguel Almirian. Per Miguel's own statement, they saw Carmine being taken into custody. The 911 callers demand the release of Carmine, and then they plant a second explosive on MRPD, a device with a 5-minute timer. 5 minutes prior to that detonation, Ramee Rahman's phone records once again put him right in the
Oh, this guy's still talking.
Interviews
oh my God.
demonstrate that the excuse that they were driving around. The next day, Mr. K awakens out of the ICU, learns that Baas has died, and he attacks Miguel Almirian and Ramee Rahman, 2 of his associates. He blows them up with explosives, poetic considering the way that
Oh, this
Commissioner
guy's
Baas
still
had
talking.
just perished the day before. And finally, on the 14th, Miguel Almirian and Ramee Rahman, contrary to the statements in interviews saying they had no idea about the bombing of Beaverbush, are placed in the area of the bombing minutes prior to the detonation by their phone
Holy
records.
fuck.
The dynamic duo who hadn't left each other's sides for days once again in the direct vicinity of
Bro.
a bombing tied to the first 2 through 911 calls referring back to the previous bombs. So the people asked this court, what other reasonable alternative could the evidence paint? Is it reasonable to believe that Ramee Rahman and Miguel Almirian happened to be just driving in the area every time these bombs were detonated? Were they coincidentally there? Is it a coincidence that an enemy of CG, Mr. Costello, was blamed and centered on each of these 3 incidents? Mr. Costello, who Ramee Rahman had targeted personally several times.
Poland is an op,
K.
chat.
Is it a coincidence that upon learning about of the death of Baas, Mr. K targets Ramee Rahman? Did he and the people both have it wrong this entire time? Will the court accept the defense of continuous and unadulterated coincidences? I've been going on for a super long time, and I'm sorry about that. But anyone who knew Commissioner Baas would know that he was a huge fan of metaphors. He was also a fan of butchering them, but that was part of his charm. So I'm going to quote one of our former presidents in closing. There's an old saying in Tennessee. I know, no, it's Texas, probably Tennessee. It says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again." Don't get fooled by the defense's statement that there's no proof or that the allegations are coincidences. Find the defendants guilty, Your Honor. Thank you.
How did he fuck that? That's like such a well-known saying.
Okay, everybody wake up.
All right. Well.
Anyone got a time check on that?
25 minutes and 54 seconds.
All right.
Jesus Christ.
25.
Bondi, you've done better, buddy. Come on.
Yeah, no, I wasn't.
You go at least 39.
I was not going for a record, Your Honor.
Was
All right.
Just giving you a little shit.
Adams, I just sent you a picture. Can you put it up on the thing for me, please?
Let me look at it real quick.
Yeah, it's on your phone.
I just finished my scav run. Are we still going?
This wipe, really?
Yeah, of course.
I hear it's pretty bad.
All right.
Sure.
No, that's
It's
over
not
with.
probative evidence.
All right.
I
Okay.
think it sums up Ramee's response.
So anyway, as we were saying, guys, well, here's my closing statement. Your Honor, I was not seen at any of these locations. Per Bundy's testimony, a person in black was seen at the SDSO building. If that is the case, this entire courtroom is guilty of the murder of Sam Bass, if we're gonna go by those jurisdictions and laws. Your Honor.
Jurisdiction?
Shut up, Brian. Your Honor, every single testimony here, all the reports and the evidence all state that I was not ID'd at any situation. Frankly, Miguel wasn't even mentioned in this entire court case. And yeah, that's all. Your Honor, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I'll let Murphy give the long one, but this is
Fucking dog
I'm
shit,
not gonna lie.
man.
I got super tired after that fucking. I got super tired. Listen, I'm gonna keep it real. I got hella tired after fucking
Why didn't you bring up the
Bundy's
baby?
speech.
What the fuck was that?
I'm
After-
not gonna lie here, Ramee. That wasn't very Mike Ross of you.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest with you. I'm tired as fuck after Bundy's fucking closing statement. I'm gonna be honest.
Like Lewis.
Yeah, I had to make some cuts to mine.
Yeah, make some
I
cuts.
figured that would happen. I made some cuts. Cut it down.
You didn't
All
have
right.
to make cuts.
I had a whole eulogy for Bass that got cut. Sorry, I was gonna
Yeah,
do
please.
a few words for him, but yeah, nah, we don't need to do that. So listen, in a case like this, it's super important to get it right because you're dealing
This
with
motherfucker's
a lot of circumstantial facts and evidence, a lot of
I'm so tired.
inconclusive,
I don't know
as
why.
Bundy put
I
it,
got like hella
partial
like just
identification,
dehydrated
I
from
guess,
listening.
is
I don't know
the
how to even
euphemism for
describe
not
it.
seeing a
I'm like
motherfucker.
lethargic as fuck listening to
I
Bundy.
mean, just to give an
Listening to
indication
that
of the
shit.
standard, because I was at this deposition. Let me find the partial.
I don't know if
quote.
he's like
I didn't
because
see
he's
his face,
monotone.
but I was pretty sure it was Ramee because he had a black shirt and a sword. That's the
I think it's because
level
he's
of
like super
identification that we're
monotone. It
talking
just put me to
about when
fucking
we're
sleep,
talking
bro.
about those two officers in Bundy's closing. Black clothing, two individuals. Couldn't see whether they were wearing helmets or masks. That's how good the description
Bro, that
was.
was
And
fucking
the other
brutal.
person, the other officer said,
Energy vampire.
I'm pretty sure it was
Yeah.
Ramee, but I didn't see his face. So let's make that clear on the identification to parrot what Ramee said. It's very important to get it right when it comes to an accumulation of evidence like this, especially given that most of the witnesses that have either given affidavits or given sworn testimony are fellow law enforcement officers. Everybody who is an officer of the court or an officer of the law knows roughly how that is weighed generally as evidence. It cannot be discounted.
I had to order
in this
coffee.
case. We're not only talking about the death
At
of a
fucking
police officer,
9:30
we're
at
talking
night.
about
That's
a
how
beloved
fucking
figure in
tired
their
Bundy's
community,
speech made
a
me.
former
I'm not even
commissioner
lying.
who's
Wallahi, I'm
held
not even
high
joking. I
in
literally ordered a
esteem
coffee mid fucking
amongst
mid speech.
most law
Bro, I
enforcement.
ordered a coffee
Their
and it
zeal,
came mid speech.
to seek justice in his memory is to be commended and it is to be respected. And I do respect that they are trying to get justice for Sam Baas however best they can and at any cost and at no expense spared. So, you know, they've tried the best case before them insofar as that goes, and they have my admiration. But those facts and inconclusive statements and testimonies do need to be weighed a little differently because there's almost an institutional bias about Sam Baas that is not negligible. Now, the facts and forensics of this case have clearly fallen short of expectation, given the mention of partial ID and little catchphrases like that. There's no smoking gun here. We have a lot of unconnected reports being tied together primarily by a firsthand eyewitness, Mr. Costello, whose credibility is verifiably questionable at best. It has been determined that it is a two-way street of hostility between Carmine Costello and members of Chang Gang. So his capacity to lie or mislead or deceive in an effort to cause hurt and pain to the defendants is also not negligible, and his credibility must be weighed accordingly. Like I said, the reports listed in the people's evidence barely mention the defendants, barely mention Miguel or Ramee. The phone records, insofar as text messages, there's nothing incriminating there. Phone calls that were made or received that have been mentioned, weren't even answered. There's a lot to go through and not come up with much in terms of the evidence. And I was expecting to hear some sort of bombshell, and I never really did. It's understandable to want justice, and I have no doubt that the people are confident they have the right targets, but they may be a little too confident of that. They may have succumbed to a bit of tunnel vision on this one. But yeah, it is interesting that Bundy said the job of the prosecution is to use the information available and to construct a narrative. While they have constructed a narrative, I do believe they have failed to use the information available. Now, I'm going to say some things, and I'd like to mention first that I've lost count since I started counting of the number of times witnesses, prosecutors have mentioned a whole lot of hearsay stated supposedly by Mr. K in this court case. And with that in mind, I'm going to move on to sort of the meat of this case. I'm going to refer to the prosecution's statement of claim as well as the closing statement where they state
Oh my
that
God.
Mr. K sought revenge
Yo.
for things that supposedly Ramee did and did in fact target Ramee and Miguel. There have been many utterances
You got any Play-Doh?
of hearsay of Mr. K in this case in relation to those things. So I'm left to ask myself, with all this mention of Mr. K and things that he's supposed to have said, why was Mr. K not listed as an eyewitness in this case? And, well, shit, you know, I can't think of a good reason for that. Because the prosecution's entire case is predicated and their motive is established based on the motives and actions of Mr. K against the defendants. He is also a victim and a material eyewitness to the murder of Sam Baas. I can think of only two reasons why he wouldn't be listed as an eyewitness. The first one, which I want to be very clear, Your Honor, this is not what I believe to be the case. It simply slipped their minds. The second, of course, is that they had concerns about the testimony of Mr. K and how it may or may not line up with the narrative they're presenting here today. They were afraid. They had a fear of what he might say under oath on the stand, and they acted on that fear. They're not allowed to do that, is kind of what I'm getting at. And they're especially not allowed to do that and then shoehorn a bunch of hearsay into their stuff. So in short, the defense has the right to remain silent. The prosecution, on the other hand, subscribes to a different set of rules. They are not able to pick and choose which evidence to use in their case or which material eyewitnesses to select at their leisure. And there were many complications in this case. Things were sealed, and there were lengthy pretrial discussions regarding witnesses. And I can confirm that never at any point did Mr. K make it onto a witness list. So the second reason, of course, they would withhold him is for that fear. They do not get to act on that fear. If someone's statements and sworn testimony can have a direct impact on the proceedings such that they are mentioned roughly every 30 to 45 seconds throughout the entire trial and are paraphrased, quoted directly, and phone calls mentioned with parties who are deceased, guilt or innocence cannot be determined. And the length to which they've gone to put words into Mr. K's mouth suggests that they decided very early not to include him. And I waited all through discovery to see if they would add him or to potentially maybe add him as a defendant. I don't know. And the outside chance always existed that he would be called as a surprise witness. Seems like that kind of case. That window was slammed shut on the people's fingers. This is a very, very, very blatant, bold textbook Brady violation. And it's like a dismissed with prejudice kind of Brady violation. It is very egregious. And with that, I leave you with many, many things to chew on, Your Honor.
Your Honor, is that a motion to dismiss that the people need to respond to, or is that just kind of rhetoric? I kind of fell asleep for a little while there.
Just about to ask that, actually.
That's crazy. I fell asleep on this.
I feel like that's
30
where you were
minutes ago.
going, Braun. That's the vibe I was getting
yeah.
with how you brought that to the end. Are you
yeah.
introducing
Motion.
a formal motion to dismiss at this time?
Motion to dismiss with prejudice on the grounds of a Brady violation. They
Oh, I can-
excluded exculpatory evidence.
I can tackle this very easily, Your Honor. Show
Sure.
me a Brady motion on the docket. If I'm familiar with Maryland versus Brady, which I think that I am, the defense is required to file a motion requesting exculpatory information, and Mr. Braun failed to do so. So Maryland versus Brady doesn't apply to anything in this case.
Okay, so
I'd also like to add
the prosecution can seal
Honor,
the
may I
entire
continue?
court case.
Hold on.
I started
on.
talking before she did, Your Honor.
Ms. Colfax, I'll allow for an additional rebuttal, but Mr. Braun did start speaking. I'll hear what you have to say.
I
Mr.
understand,
Braun.
but yeah. Sorry, there's a lot of talking.
Yeah, but you want to
will-
just
you will be
they just
heard,
want to keep
Counselor.
interrupting me. That's fine. That's
You will
fine.
be heard, Counselor, but Mr. Braun, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, now I forgot what Bundy said. That
No.
He stated that there was no motion for such on the docket, and therefore.
Oh,
this
okay.
is
Right.
required.
So, this is a very atypical case, Your Honor. A lot of the information flowed very slowly and secretly, and throughout the entire discovery process, like I said, I waited to see if he would be added as a witness or a defendant.
You were saying that
If-
they were allowed to seal everything, but you weren't, or some shit like that. That's what you were saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
Your Honor, as part of further response, first I would note that this means that counsel noted that that hole existed and chose to not motion for production or anything along those lines. One might argue that that's bad faith on behalf of defense counsel.
Or poor
for,
litigation on your half.
Shut up, Ramee.
Mr.
I'm
O'Rahman.
talking. Secondly, Mr. K has
Ramee, cook
mentioned
the Ramee.
multiple times there is a subpoena in which he is notified that his phone records were taken. His statements from Mr. K tonight are mentioned on multiple reports. And as the defense counsel just pointed out, his name is mentioned in the primary report this is attached to. They knew he was a
Is this a
witness.
whole
They could've-
extra closing statement, Your Honor?
Shut
He's
the fuck
rebutting
up,
to
Murphy.
your-
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not standing for that because I'm being nice, Your Honor. I wanted to get contempt
Oh,
for
he's
that. I
mad.
want my chance to speak.
Oh, he's mad.
That's the second time they've interrupted me while I was trying to respond, Your Honor.
I
All right, Your Honor.
understand.
Bundy's
Okay.
ticky-tack nonsense does
Okay,
not
how about-
override
how
their
about-
responsibility to call
both of
every
you with
eyewitness to a
comments?
homicide, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I conclude?
Who the fuck did that?
I heard it over there in the
Is he
corner.
getting contempt for that or not?
phone's going off.
That's not my phone.
Is he getting contempt? No, I was listening to his response.
you,
and there was
Bundy.
an interruption from the defense side. Murphy, you, however, for that, absolutely.
Murphy,
blew.
relax.
I didn't even
How
get. I
does
didn't
he
even
get
get a
contempt?
warning. He said, "Shut the fuck up" to me. I
I
said,
gave a
"Fuck you
blanket
back."
warning
He
at the
didn't
start
get
of the case
contempt.
that you were present for, sir.
So how come he didn't
You
get
gave
that?
him the same blanket warning, Your Honor.
Yes, I understand he was interrupted, sir. I was addressing the court and you spoke
I'm
over
gonna
me,
die.
Mr.
I'm gonna
Braun.
die.
Yes.
I should
just,
get
uh,
one just like he did, Your Honor. But whatever.
Just to wrap up, Your Honor, they knew that witness existed. They could have interviewed him. They could have called him. It's not a Brady violation because we don't have any additional information they haven't been given. We ain't got nothing to hand over.
And again, Your Honor, I will say that their ticky-tack nonsense over there does not override the fact that they have a responsibility to call every eyewitness to a homicide and every eyewitness who has material facts
we're
to this
literally
case.
limited to
Don't
two
need-
witnesses.
I don't need anything further from either side. Mr. Braun, your concerns are noted.
Oh
and
my
I
God.
understand what you are leaning in towards here. I am going to deny the motion to dismiss with prejudice.
Yeah,
at this
no.
time. However,
Yeah.
However, I will say, I will review the evidence at hand. I will refer the references to the individual known as Mr. K at hand. I will review them in the light that they are given. If it's just evidence to conversations that were had directly without any factual evidence, I will view it as such. I won't necessarily take it as gospel, sir. I will hold it in weight accordingly. I won't give it the value that I would something like an interrogation that is recorded, sir. With that said, I do thank you both for your time.
Your Honor, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I don't understand. Let me just talk freely here. That you can tell me if I'm like a dumbass or not. All right. Listen. The entire court case, they put words that Mr. K said, done, and his actions have taken, and didn't even question him or bring him up or do anything. Allegedly,
Cross
of
count.
course, obviously.
Your Honor, may I rebut?
So how is it even?
I don't need a rebuttal here. I've already explained.
I'm not
this to him.
object-
Please,
All right, whatever. All right, go ahead.
this isn't necessarily an objection, Mr. L. Rahman,
I'm
as
just
I
curious.
stated, and so I can kind of explain to you, right? with regards to evidentiary standards here and how this works, Mr. Spector, as I'm sure you're aware as
Here we go.
an aspiring attorney,
Here we go.
they are speaking to conversations that they had as direct witness, right? I'll admit the testimony, but I'll weigh it, but I won't hold it as heavily as I would something like your recorded interrogation with Brian Knight, as example, or Miguel's, or anybody else's. I'll take it under advisement and consideration. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's gospel. I'm not giving it the same weight or value as anything else that I would in this matter, sir. So while it's not inherently stricken from the record, and now while I'm denying the motion to dismiss at this time, I will hold it in such a light, sir.
Sounds good, Your Honor.
And Counselor Braun's concerns have been noted for the record.
I just want to say, guys, I'm right here if anyone has any questions.
We're far
I've been
beyond
right
that
here the
point,
whole
Mr.
time.
K.
Do it jiggle?
You're far beyond that point.
I'm just saying, I've been here the whole time, guys.
You have, in fact, been here the whole time.
Hey,
and I do
Mr.
appreciate
Judge.
you being
Hey, is Murphy getting contempt?
Bro, you're a op.
I'll stew on it and determine at the.
What the fuck?
I'll determine that at the time of a verdict.
Yeah,
I
because
understand.
I think I
the-
heard Bundy scream like a little pussy like 4 times after the fact you gave him contempt.
I will determine that at the time that I deliver
Oh,
this
don't work
verdict,
me up
Mr.
again,
Almieri, and
Miguel.
I do
Appreciate it.
sir.
I can't
That said,
afford to get contempt.
I have
I haven't seen Bundy that pissed
40
in a minute. I ain't
I
gonna
need
lie.
49
more of
articles
that.
of evidence to review, and a
Yeah.
couple-
I wouldn't want the
including
park ranger to go
multiple
kick an animal.
hour interrogations. I have 4
Hold on,
affidavits,
he pulled
2
that
sealed
nitpicky shit out of
depositions,
his
and
ass 'cause
3
he's like,
witnesses,
"Fuck."
3 bits of witness testimony to review.
He knows I'm right.
I have a 25 statement from Mr. Bundy, as well as you guys' closing as well to review. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and retire to my chambers for deliberation. This will take a while. I am not certain that I will have a verdict this evening. I will advise shortly whether I will ask this court to reconvene at a later time or if I can get to something this evening. I will let you know in short order. I ask that everyone remain here momentarily while I make that determination, and I will come in and address the court as such to that. For now, this matter is placed into recess. I'll go ahead and deliberate.
Thank you, Your Honor.